What's up, everybody, and welcome to Real Time for the Real Everyday Movie Fan. I'm Ryan Murphy,
And I'm James Sheridan.
and we're welcome to our second ever Real Time Weekly, which is not only late, it's going up on Tuesday night. Supposed to be aiming these for Sunday, but also Josh is not here with us because he had to go spend time with his wife. So whatever.
One of us has to have a life.
One of us has to have a life. So we are here to discuss a few things. First of all, we just get out of the way real quick. Marvel delayed some movies. Big whoop. Like, not much to say. Okay.
Well, I'm interested to see how that's going to impact their storytelling. Like, if you saw the behind this, like some of the production stills and whatnot from No Way Home. America Chavez was supposed to be in that, and because of the schedule change and whatnot, they had to completely change part of the story for that movie because of that schedule change. So I am interested to see, because we discussed on the previous episode the fiasco surrounding Blade, and of course that one got moved, and a bunch of other ones got moved, including as we discussed in our Werewolf by Night review, that the one of the next Avengers is one of the sort of casualties of this sort of schedule shifting, and I have a feeling it's due to sort of like a difference in continuity and the need for like certain movies to happen before certain other movies, simply for things to line up properly for storytelling purposes. However, that's just a shot in the dark. I don't know any of this for sure. I'm not an insider, so just purely speculation on my part. But the change of dates makes me curious about what we can kind of figure out based on that. So I'll have to take a look at that. I haven't had a chance to, because unfortunately it just happened this afternoon as I was working. So yeah.
Okay. So next up today, since it's Tuesday, Angela Lansbury passed away. 96 years old, amazing legacy. Academy Award nominee for The Manchurian Candidate, which was listed as one of the great villains of film history by the American Film Institute, one of the top 50 villains, right up there with the Terminator. And also, of course, known for Murder, She Wrote, but also to Disney fans for Bedknobs and Broomsticks. And of course, Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast.
Which is why I made the joke today. Oh no, someone spilled the tea.
Oh, that's fucking horrible. You're going to hell.
I'm already going there.
Well, might as well make it worth it then. Angela Lansbury, rest in peace.
Yep.
And I think pretty much the only thing really left to discuss is the Super Mario Brothers trailer, which I've been.
Well, there was some other stuff that came out of New York Comic Con, but the trailer was like sort of the big thing. Most of it sort of like flew under my radar or wasn't that interesting. I think the biggest other thing was that they're doing more Avatar, The Last Airbender, sort of like peripheral material. But yeah, the Mario trailer, which is funny because it was not only like premiering at New York Comic Con, but they also did a Nintendo Direct for it, which if you aren't a Nintendo fan, you may not know, but once a month Nintendo does a Direct where they sort of like live broadcast a showcase of like upcoming titles that they're doing, or tease a title and then at a later showcase kind of show off what that title's looking at. Like one of the big ones recently was the Breath of the Wild sequel, which everyone's been waiting for. And sometimes they'll do a very special one dedicated to one specific game or one specific franchise, like Pokemon has one every couple months because Pokemon's such a huge franchise. And of course, this being, probably the most famous mascot of all of video games,
flagship,
and dedicating an entire sort of showcase to just Mario's trailer was kind of exciting. A little overdrawn, a little too much preamble for my taste, but and I really the Jack Black moment was fine, but bringing in Chris Pratt and him fumbling what a Koopa is didn't instill a lot of faith in me before the you didn't watch the preamble, did you?
Oh, no.
Okay. So he was talking about, how he went to arcades as a kid to play Mario Bros. Mario Bros, not Super Mario Bros, to make a distinction here. And he talked about how he kept on kicking and then paused for like an extended amount of time to remember the word Koopas, which doesn't instill a lot of faith that, this guy spent probably the last year of his life sort of immersed in this world and doesn't remember one of the major, like most iconic characters from the franchise. A little concerning to me. But yeah, that was the preamble. The actual trailer is a completely different beast. So yeah, what was your take on the trailer?
Well, I was really curious about this movie because as you know, James and I are both really into lore. We really love like getting into the big lore of things. In fact, I'm working my way through like all of Marvel comic books like ever published right now, just to get immersed in the lore and trying to, and just give me a good lore and I'll dive headfirst into it. So in the past few months with this movie coming up, I've tried to get more into Mario lore, and the big frustrating thing about Mario lore is it sort of only half exists.
There isn't much Mario lore, and that's the thing that I've been discovering lately too.
Summary of the first game, that like the manual of the first game, which is where you find the story of most games, says that Mario is a person who is the Mario brothers are brought into the world of the Mushroom Kingdom. Never says how, never says where they're from. Just that actually all it says, it doesn't even say they're brought into the world. It says Mario hears the
Mario arrives. Yeah.
Mario arrives, Mario hears the Mushroom Kingdom's plight and comes to help. He could be from the Mushroom Kingdom, he could be not. The games never say. All we do have to go on is Donkey Kong showed that he seemed to be in sort of our world because he was building it. Anyway, and then the Dick shows, the DIC shows, the DIC shows, came out and sort of created their own mythology that he was from Brooklyn, that's where the whole idea that they were from Brooklyn came from, and that they were sucked down a drain. And then the 1993 movie, the live action movie, sort of used that same mythology. So that was just sort of adopted. Most people thought of that as how it was. However, then in the 90s, Charles Martinet started voicing Mario in the games and the advertisements, and did so with a thick Italian accent. Which would seem to, and that became official canon. Like in the games, the one thing we knew about Mario was he spoke with an Italian accent, which would seem to completely obliterate the idea of him coming from Brooklyn. Then in Yoshi's Island 2, they show that Mario and Luigi are very much born within the world of the Mushroom Kingdom, if not the Mushroom Kingdom itself.
I believe Yoshi's Island is part of Dino Land, which is technically separate from the Mushroom Kingdom, but
that's what I'm saying.
It's part of the same world.
You can dissect this, but they've never just come out and
there's been no definitive continuity about Mario's origin.
Who he is, where he's from. There have been people who have put out like their own theories that he was born in, that he was raised in Brooklyn by Italian immigrants, and they adopted their accents, which is not how it works with first generation Americans. There's all sorts of things like that, but they've never come out and said, although
there is one interview from Shigeru Miyamoto about Mario Bros, not Super Mario Bros, but Mario Bros, stating that in his mind, it was set in New York. But continuity that has come since then, specifically with Mario Odyssey, all of the, not specifically that game, but the Donkey Kong stuff, the Mario Odyssey seems to imply that all of the Donkey Kong stuff seems to come from New Donk City, which is a city in the Metro Kingdom in the same world as the Mushroom Kingdom. So even our assumption that Donkey Kong took place in New York seems to be kibosh. The only game I can find that says definitively that they are from Brooklyn, New York, or any sort of indication of our world is Mario in Time, which was a third-party game put out by an education company for MS-DOS and was ported to the NES and Super NES. So its continuity is very nebulous at best, and it's sort of like just a passing reference of the king of China in like, I think it was like 300 BC or something, asked him, where are you from? And Mario says, oh, I'm from Brooklyn. And it's meant to be a joke because, of course, the king of China from 300 BC has no idea what Brooklyn is. And that is the only reference I can find in any Mario game, any Mario continuity that is sort of like canonically accurate.
Well, at any rate, me being a completist, I decided to absorb all more Mario lore, and that included watching every episode of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which is a horrifying cartoon from the late 80s. Watched every single episode with the intention of watching every episode of the next show, which was The Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3, and then Super Mario World. Fell off the wagon, haven't done it.
Yeah.
But it was all in preparation for this movie, which comes out in 6 months now. And And I was thought maybe this will actually be the first thing. Maybe this will be set within the world of the video games and will actually be the first thing to canonically state that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is what someone was kind of reporting, was that it was going to be sort of a Wreck-It Ralph sort of movie where he was going to be very self-awarely a video game character who was going to do some stuff. And I was like, nope, that's the worst case scenario. So thankfully the movie sort of entered the middle ground. It wasn't the best case scenario, it wasn't the worst case scenario. It seems to be just a direct adaptation of the Super Mario Brothers 1985 game, where Mario is taken out of, looks like he comes out from our world, just like in the Dick cartoons, just like in the 1993 movie. And this is sort of, like I said, what people kind of just assume it to be, based on those adaptations, which is that he comes from our world, he's sucked into the Mushroom Kingdom somehow. Luigi comes after him, I think, in this, like he's going to get sucked, he's going to go looking for him, and he's going to get sucked in the same porthole or whatever. And he finds the Mushroom Kingdom, and he's going to be the one to stop Bowser. It seems to be a pretty straightforward adaptation. James and I have talked about this in private, like how much of an adaptation of the game is going to be. How does Donkey Kong factor into that if that's the case?
Yeah.
And
well, that's the thing, is I don't know if it's actually going to be how much of it is based on the actual game. Like, the problem with Mario is most of the games are fairly repetitive. It's basically the same story over and over again, with the exception of Mario 2 and Mario 3, Mario 2 being a dream and being a reskin of Doki Doki Panic, Mario 3 being a stage play about the first game. So it isn't technically even canon either. It's them putting on a play about what happened in the previous stories. But in most other iterations, it's Mario saving the Mushroom Kingdom from Bowser in some way or another. Even some of the like sports games and whatnot, there's that sort of implication. But in terms of like an actual continuity, there isn't really much of one. And like, that's sort of like a ubiquitous sort of, genre defining story point for most of the games. Where he comes from, like the trailer doesn't give us much about where he comes from. We just see him fall out of a pipe, and the only indication that we have that he's not from the Mushroom Kingdom is the fact that he's confused by the Mushroom Kingdom. But that doesn't mean he's not from a different part of that world. Like if he grew up in New Donk City, which is part of that world and would be connected by those pipes kind of thing, he may not be used to all of these different worlds if he's never left New Donk City itself. So it's entirely possible in my headcanon that, he was born on Yoshi's Island, carried off by storks with his twin brother Luigi, which is apparently what the canon is. Different shows make them like he's the older brother or like vastly older brother in the Mario Brothers movie. And he's swept away by the storks, brought to whoever raises him in New Donk City, and then comes to the Mushroom Kingdom sort of by accident. I have a feeling he's probably looking for Luigi or something, because I don't know why else he would come there. But he's sort of the scene we see unfold is him being sort of wowed by what he's seeing, and then surprised by Toad, who, if you know anything about the Mushroom Kingdom, the denizens all look like Toad. They're pretty ubiquitously the same character. Some have differing sort of like personalities. Some have differing sort of like, it's sort of like the Smurfs. They're just mushroom Smurfs kind of thing, where it's just a repeat sort of character. And then you make one sporty, and you make one sort of, there's an entire series of games where there's a, what the hell is it? There's like a minor Toad, minor as in like mining, not as in like a child. It's a weird sort of like platform game where you can't jump and you have to like solve puzzles like in like various levels and what. It's a fascinating game, but like they give them kind of jobs, and like there's Toadette, who's again just a basically like Smurfette. So like if he was familiar with this world, all of these characters would look familiar. So him being confused by Toad very clearly indicates that this is new to him. We don't really have much else to go on. One of the things that going back to the actual trailer, we've kind of done the lore thing a bit, but the trailer itself, I do want to talk about some of the actual aesthetics of it, because visually it looks on point with the more recent games, especially since the 3DS era and the new Super Mario Bros. Games. And their 3D depiction of what the world looks like, what the characters look like. It's very similar to that. I'm disappointed that Bowser's in sort of like a floating island rather than his airships, but it's neither here nor there. Plus,
I
we
don't know,
get,
putting this much thought into an analysis of like a children's.
dude, I have been thinking about Mario for 30 some odd years. Okay. Since I first picked up the very first game, Mario has been consistently one of my favorite game franchises because of how good this franchise is as a game franchise. Like, you can rely on Mario games to be well made, to be fun, quirky, interesting. And it certainly looks like this is borrowing a lot of that. It has that quirky, bouncy sort of personality that is very common to those. But that's part of why some of the voice acting in this has me concerned.
Mm.
And we've mentioned Chris Pratt off the top. Now, Jack Black, I was worried about too, because Jack Black tends to be very Jack Black. But him as Bowser was, I'm not going to say it was so spot on that it was perfect, but it's good enough that I'm willing to go with it and see where he goes with it, because he's still very Jack Black, but it's like he's in that realm of Bowser where like I'm willing to go with it. Charlie Day as Luigi, we only hear him really scream, and Keegan-Michael Key as Toad is pretty much spot on. Like, it's the annoying squeaky Toad voice, but like Toad being sort of a guide, an assistant to Mario is perfectly in character. And again, we're talking about like 3-second snippets of each character kind of thing. So take it for what you will. But the concerning thing about this, since the trailer since the movie was announced, was the voice cast and just how much stunt casting there was in terms of just like big name personalities. Now, most of these are character actors, so I'm willing to go with most of them. But Chris Pratt is very much in every role the same person, just varying degrees of the same person. And none of those people kind of remind me of Mario. So I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt until I heard him speak. And it's like, he's just doing Chris Pratt. And there, you can hear a little when he's bouncing on the mushrooms at the end, he's putting in a little bit of a New York accent, but it's like he's not even really trying. And one of the most egregious things is they have a moment where they can say one of Mario's most famous lines. It says, Mushroom Kingdom, here we come. And it's like, no, let's go. It evokes the same emotion, but it's like, it's the perfect, it's a Mario line. It's like a staple Mario line. It's like, you had a moment there, you've let it go. And it's like, oh, I want to love this and I want to be excited about this. But the mischaracterization of Mario is a big concern. In a way, like it never was with Sonic. When I heard the Sonic voice in the trailer, like it immediately to me, even though like Ben Schwartz is very, very distinctly Ben Schwartz.
Well, it wasn't Julia White, who's just sort of become so synonymous with the role, With
one version, there's been various different versions and various different.
He was both the voice in the really shitty the really shitty weekday cartoon that was just him versus the robot chicken and the robot. It was just really
those were the same production though. They're different shows and different continuities, but it was the same production that put them together. There have been subsequent ones since then, and a whole slew of comics and continuity with Sonic that like very distinctly create his character, as opposed to like the comic character who never speaks, or the video game character who never speaks. There is a very distinct personality to Sonic, and hearing Ben Schwartz's voice, I was concerned he would be straight up Ben Schwartz, but he was Sonic enough that like I don't feel pulled out of it when I'm watching the Sonic movies. Whereas with this, I was immediately pulled out of it. And it's like, oh, it's Chris Pratt. And it's like, I don't want to have anything against Chris Pratt. I don't want to go into that diatribe of like all the people who hate Chris Pratt. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that he is an actor. He can pull off a performance, but it's like, I don't feel like he's even trying at this. And it's like, one of my pet peeves is doing the famous person stunt casting of, characters who are animated. And like I've always been of the opinion that, we should be casting voice actors, or at least actors who have like voice acting experience and can do a little bit different. Keegan-Michael Key, again, being a perfect example of where he's actually doing Toad. I know it's still Jack Black, but like they've pushed it a bit into the Bowser sort of register with some, vocal processing and whatnot, but like it still feels like Bowser. Whereas this, it doesn't feel like Mario. That said, the design of it, the aesthetic of it, the visuals, like all of it looks so spot on. I was complaining about it not being a ship as opposed to being the floating castle, but that allows us the opportunity to see, Bowser's castle in various different scenarios now. I love that idea because Bowser's Castle is such a staple of the Mario franchise. It's always the sort of final boss scenario, and it's like I'm glad that that's going to be faithfully adapted in there, but like he can bring it wherever he needs to. And the penguins are great. I love the penguins. Penguins have been a long staple in the Mario games, and they're always sort of like these abused, quirky little characters, and it's like they're still abused, but it's like at least this time it's by the bad guy and not the hero. But I don't know. I'm excited for it, but I'm also hesitant because of the Chris Pratt thing. And
cautiously optimistic, maybe.
Yeah, that would be a good way to say it. And yeah, I like you said, I'm very excited about the idea of there actually being a coherent sort of continuity put to this.
But it's not because it's still hold on.
Bless you.
It's not going to be a coherent lore because even this is going to be an adaptation. Even if it doesn't adapt one just straight away, it's meant to be an adaptation. It's not meant to be within the continuity of the games. It's not meant to consolidate.
No, it's not going to be it's not going to be the continuity of the games, but it's like even the previous TV show versions, the continuity was very sort of iffy from episode to episode. Like the purpose of it wasn't to tell the story, it was to cash in on the Mario thing and like bring to life certain characters and whatnot, but it wasn't like a faithful adaptation. This feels like they're at least trying to be faithful. Nintendo's invested a lot into this movie. They have creative control over it, so I have faith that they're going to do a good job, but the stunt casting is a concern. And I to the point, I meandered from the point of the continuity thing. I would like to see like finally an actual origin story told properly that isn't just
within the actual games, but yeah.
Well, not even with like that's faithfully adapted from the games and not just here's Lou Albano in an apartment that's supposed to be in Brooklyn, or here's Bob Haskins and John Leguizamo that they barely resemble the characters. They fall into a portal and end up in the Mushroom Kingdom, which looks nothing like the Mushroom Kingdom. It looks like it's, straight out of Blade Runner, but like a low budget Blade Runner.
Yeah, I knew what you're saying. I mean, the completist in me and the lore file in me is just still really yearns for Shigeru Miyamoto for some game to come out that ties it all together and says, yes, the fan theories were correct. He was born in the Mushroom Kingdom world, but was taken out and raised first in Italy and then in Brooklyn. So he comes in and out of his New York, of his Brooklyn, of his Italian accent. He gets sucked back into the Mushroom Kingdom, which, and stuff like, I want to see an official Lord of the Games. That's not what this is going to be, but it's still going to be something that, just one more thing that says this is,
Well, you also have to remember that a lot of these games predate the concept of doing video game lore. There isn't like, even within the Donkey Kong world, like much of the Donkey Kong story didn't really come along until Donkey Kong Country. And even that it's sort of like nebulous at best. But like games didn't really have a story. They just threw you into a world and you had to kind of just figure it out. Mario Brothers started that exact same way. They don't tell you in the game what's happening. You just start running to the right. And like, I don't really have a problem with there not being a sort of coherent continuity between things because they're supposed to be fun, goofy games, but I wouldn't mind if there was a version that told a story. There have been RPG series, of course, Mario RPG itself, Paper Mario, the Mario and Luigi series on the DS and 3DS. I would like to see, something along those lines, maybe tell a story, but to me, that type of storytelling lends much more to a film, which is what we're getting. And there, I would like to see a sort of more definitive origin that is faithful to the games while not really necessarily being the games.
Boy. All right. So we made a big dive, deep words is hard.
I've been thinking about this movie for a long time, man.
Deep dive into, and you're right. Like it's been for something to have been around as long as this has been without a really proper adaptation. It's had one big movie adaptation, and that was horrible. And it's had several film animated adaptation or TV animated adaptations that are horrible. And to have
and nothing since the early 90s. Like they haven't made updated shows since then.
Yeah. So this,
and it's like,
yeah,
every other franchise gets milked to death, but like Nintendo has never put out another Mario TV series or Legend of Zelda TV series after the early 90s. It's like, so this I'm excited for, because we've had that sort of like glut of like nothing for so long.
Glut of nothing.
Well, I'm trying to find the right word. I was going to say, like, I was trying to think of like a desert, it's just like nothing. It's just like dead and decay, just waiting for like an oasis of an actual Mario story. And we're finally getting that. So
Chris Pratt. Yeah. And I know, like, you're not the only one. People are like, Chris Pratt just sounds like Chris Pratt. Why did they make his voice like that? We were expecting either the Italian accent or at least like the.
I'm fine with no accent. I want the personality. He can just go with his normal accent, but I want the personality of Mario, and I'm not getting that from that. Like Charles Martinet, I love Charles Martinet, but he's not meant to be more than just like sound bites within a game kind of thing. And then yes, they use him for advertising and whatnot, but again, like a 30-second commercial, he speaks like twice in it. Maybe it's 6 seconds at length kind of thing. That's not the voice of like someone you want on screen for the entire time. But I do think there are better actors out there and better voice actors who could have done a version of it, or Chris Pratt could have done a version of it. But I need personality. I need to see that Mario is in that character the way I saw Sonic, or even like Ryan Reynolds as Detective Pikachu. I like that depiction. I know it's still stunt casting, but it does have sort of plot relevance, which I'm not going to go into because it's a major spoiler. But there's a reason the character sounds like that, and it's so well done that like I don't mind that it's not the Pikachu kind of voice. I can't do it, but like the voice. If you've heard the voice, you know the voice. And I'm fine. There was still the personality there, whereas this, I'm not feeling personality. It just feels like the same character from the Lego movie or the same character from Parks and Recreation. And it's like, love those, but it's not what I want for Mario. I need Mario to be on screen, and I'm not seeing that, and that's worrying me. So that's my overly long 2 cents on Mario's voice.
That was like $1. So I am cautiously optimistic. We'll see where it heads. We'll see if there's ever after 40 years a coherent storyline to the Mario games. But there you have it, folks. There's our show for the evening for Tuesday through the week of October 9th. And let us know what you thought about the Mario trailer and all the other news that came out today. And until next time, I'm Ryan Murphy.
And I'm James Sheridan.
And thank you for keeping it real.
With Real Time. Let's go.